The palace shook with gunfire. Tanks rolled through the streets of Caracas, and for 48 hours in 2002, the man who had promised to reinvent Venezuela was gone. Crowds poured into the capital, some cheering, some rioting. A coup had toppled President Hugo Chávez. But then, almost as quickly as it began, it collapsed. Chávez was back, defiant, accusing the United States of being behind it all. Washington denied it, but the world saw something shift. For decades, Venezuela had been both friend and foe to America, tied together by oil, politics, and ideology. And yet, the question still lingers. How did a relationship built on cooperation turn into one defined by suspicion and betrayal? In the early 20th century, Venezuela was not the Venezuela the world knows today. It was poor, largely agricultural, and politically unstable. Then came oil. Beneath the jungles and plains lay one of the largest petroleum reserves on Earth. The 1920s, the discovery of oil transformed Venezuela into a booming hub. And who was first in line? American oil giants like Exxon, Mobil, and Gulf. They carved pipelines through jungles, built refineries along the coast, and shipped millions of barrels north. The United States became Venezuela's biggest customer, and Venezuela became one of America's most important suppliers. The partnership wasn't equal. Wealth from oil filled the pockets of foreign companies and a small Venezuelan elite, while ordinary citizens struggled. Still, oil stitched the two nations together in a way that seemed unbreakable. But in the shadow of this prosperity, a storm was brewing. If oil could bring two nations together, it could also drive them apart. By the 1950s, Venezuela stood as a democratic beacon in Latin America. While dictators ruled across the continent, Venezuela elected governments that promised stability. The US applauded. With the Cold War raging, Washington valued Venezuela not just for oil, but as a political ally against communism. When Fidel Castro seized power in Cuba in 1959, the US turned to Venezuela as a counterweight. The message was simple. Venezuela was proof that democracy and capitalism could flourish in Latin America. And for a while, it worked. Oil dollars poured in, skyscrapers rose in Caracas, and Venezuelans enjoyed one of the highest standards of living in the region. The relationship looked strong, an oil-rich ally resisting the tide of revolution. But beneath the glittering surface, resentment grew. National pride clashed with foreign dominance. Why should American companies control Venezuela's lifeblood? Why should profits flow north while poverty remained at home? In 1960, Venezuela helped found OPEC, signaling that it wanted a bigger say in the global oil game. And by the 1970s, the US would learn just how serious Venezuela was. In 1976, Venezuela made a bold move. It nationalized its oil industry. The creation of PDVSA, Petróleos de Venezuela, ended the dominance of American corporations. Venezuela would now decide how much oil to sell, at what price, and to whom. For many Venezuelans, it was a moment of triumph. Finally, the nation's wealth would serve its people, not foreign shareholders. The US, though uneasy, adapted. America still needed Venezuelan oil, and Venezuela still needed America's market. But this new balance came with tension. Oil became a weapon. In the 1980s, when OPEC raised prices, US officials grumbled. When Venezuela adjusted production, quotas, markets shook. Yet through it all, the two nations remained locked together by barrels of crude. Venezuela couldn't escape America's demand, and America couldn't escape Venezuela's supply. But then, a soldier-turned-populist stepped onto the stage, and the fragile balance would soon shatter. Hugo Chávez burst into the national spotlight after leading a failed military uprising in 1992. Imprisoned but unbroken, he became a symbol of resistance against corruption and inequality. In 1999, he won the presidency in a landslide. Chávez promised a Bolivarian revolution. He spoke of dignity, independence, and social justice. Oil revenues, he declared, would finally be used for the poor. But Chávez had bigger ambitions. He openly challenged the United States, accusing Washington of exploiting Venezuela for decades. He forged close ties with Fidel Castro's Cuba, welcomed Iran's leaders, and even bought weapons from Russia. Then came April 2002. A short-lived coup removed Chávez from power. For 2 tense days, the world wondered if his revolution was over. But Chávez returned, claiming the US had supported the plotters. Washington denied it, but in the eyes of many Venezuelans, the accusations stuck. From that moment, the relationship was poisoned. The United States saw Chávez as a dangerous populist who courted America's enemies. Chávez saw the US as an imperial power determined to crush his revolution. But the true test would come when oil itself became a tool of defiance. In the 2000s, oil prices soared. Venezuela, sitting on the largest proven reserves in the world, was suddenly flush with cash. Chávez used this wealth to fund massive social programs at home and to expand his influence abroad. He sold subsidized oil to allies in the Caribbean and Latin America, building loyalty. He redirected exports toward China, reducing dependence on the US, and in fiery speeches at the United Nations, he denounced American leaders as threats to the world. For Washington, patience wore thin. US officials accused Chávez of undermining democracy, funding radicals, and cozying up to America's rivals. Sanctions began to appear, targeting individuals and companies tied to his government. But the real rupture came after Chávez's death in 2013, when Nicolás Maduro took power. Maduro inherited a collapsing economy, falling oil prices, and growing unrest. Unlike Chávez, he lacked charisma and faced mounting opposition. When the US accused Maduro of rigging elections in 2018, sanctions intensified. Washington even recognized opposition leader Juan Guaidó as Venezuela's rightful president. The battle lines were drawn. Yet even in hostility, oil remained the silent link. America still watched Venezuela's reserves, and Venezuela still looked north, even while turning east to Russia and China. The question now was not just about oil, but survival. Could the relationship be salvaged, or was it destined for permanent fracture? By the 2020s, Venezuela had fallen into one of the worst economic crises in modern history. Inflation ran wild, millions fled the country, and the once proud oil industry collapsed under mismanagement and sanctions. Gasoline lines stretched for miles in a nation that sat on oceans of crude. The US maintained pressure, but global events changed the calculus. Energy shortages elsewhere forced Washington to reconsider. In quiet negotiations, American officials signaled willingness to ease sanctions if Maduro made concessions. For a nation once seen as the richest in South America, Venezuela had become both a warning and a puzzle. Its story was no longer just about oil or politics, but about how fragile power can be when geography and resources collide with ideology and ambition. And so, the paradox remains. The US and Venezuela are bound together by history, torn apart by politics, and yet always circling back to one another when necessity calls. From oil wells of the 1920s to coup attempts in the 2000s, from Cold War alliances to sanctions in the present, the story of Venezuela and the United States is one of dependence, defiance, and distrust. Two nations linked by geography and resources, yet divided by visions of power. One seeking control over its destiny, the other seeking stability in a volatile world. It is a relationship that has never truly ended, only shifted, fractured, and reshaped by time. And as long as oil remains the lifeblood of both nations, Interests. The uneasy dance between Venezuela and the United States is far from over.